And we're on. Welcome everyone to
Our,
Synergy.
yeah, here we go. Episode 8.
Yeah, and we have a guest.
She was waving her hands for those who can't see.
Oh, I'm so used to the heart center where we are more visual. So, right, I need to get used to this podcast situation.
Yeah, so our wonderful guest is Allison Holley. I'm so excited to have you.
Hi, thank you. I'm really honored to be your first guest. I think that's amazing. And I know you guys are going to do really big things with this podcast. So I just want to put energy into it to launch you guys. Up next, Jim Carrey.
I know, right? Up next, yeah, right, straight from Allison to Jim Carrey. It's like that'd be a great segue.
That'd be cool. I'd be all. Oh, for those of you who were listening to the actual podcast, I was just making fire noises. It's gonna be a mess today. I can tell.
We'll have to put this one on YouTube.
Yeah, definitely.
I can't figure out audio.
Plus, I noticed Isabel on our social media earlier. You said who's going to be our 100th listener. Well, I just checked our stats, and we have 100.
Yay!
Woo! Ding 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 ding.
Yeah, that's pretty good when you consider that our marketing so far has been just pretty mellow, pretty light. We haven't done a lot of heavy sharing, but it's this is our 8th episode, and we've got 100 listens, and people are loving it.
Great, that's awesome.
You put on a good show.
Thank you.
And so people need to know that we don't even know the word that Allison picked.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say.
I had a feeling. Sorry.
Are you guys ready? I was kind of dropping hints as you guys were advertising. I was dropping hints with the little pictures that I was responding with. So the word is play.
Play.
Oh. That's awesome.
So much better. When we were speculating, wasn't it turd? Weren't we thinking?
No, that was my alternative. If I felt like I wanted to have a backup word.
I feel like that's an old.
It's just that I hang out with so many kids, and poop is really the word of the day every day. So I was like, let's do poop. Which
I kept hearing,
kind of relates.
I kept hearing in my head that old surf rock song, bird, 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 birds, except you replace it with turd. Turd, 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 turd.
That's the song in the beginning.
Turd's the word. Well, you know what I was thinking? Do you guys remember Pee-wee's Playhouse when they'd be like, the word of the day is, and then the couch would be all, wah, and everybody would start screaming?
Yeah, I never watched it, so I'm out.
I remember that completely, and that goes really well with the theme play. So.
It does.
Yeah, that's.
Actually, even his whole life afterwards, I think.
Yeah.
Allison, talk to us about your journey and how play comes to play.
Okay, I love that. So, I was feeling. I can't remember when the word came to me. You guys told me to keep it secret. So it was 5 days ago, I think, that the word came to me. And how it happened was I was really looking at what I was kind of struggling with in my own life, kind of dealing with in my own life. And that was control. And so I thought, maybe the word will be control. And so I started journaling about it, and I started writing about it and recognizing what control really is and looking at the energetics of it. And it just popped into my head, play is the opposite of control. And I was like, that's when the whole Pee-wee's Playhouse thing went off in my own head. I was like, ding, 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 play is the word, because I know you mentioned this on the advertising. I'll just talk about it. I just recently published a book, and it's called The Era of the True Creator. And I was told after I published it and put it out, one night I was told, and I just wrote it down, study play because your next book is going to be about play. And so when this thought came to me, like play is the opposite of control, it was this synergy of all of these different ideas that have been coming to me about what my next book is really going to be about. And really it's the follow-up to The Era of the True Creator, which is at the end of that book, I kind of leave off, now you're stepping into your mastery. And so it's kind of like the next part of it, like, how do we really be creators? Like, how do we really do that? And it's play. It's really been showing itself to me that it's play. And maybe on a different level than what we tend to think of, although it's all of the things. So like when we think of play, well, I'll just open it. What do you guys think of when you think of play?
Who plays? That sounds like so childlike.
Who plays? Why would I do that?
Why would we do that? That's the first thing that I think most adults want to know.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, play, like, I connect it to joy and fun and enjoyment. So that's what play is for me. And I would say, like, about the past 2 years, maybe I've started reconnecting with play when the adult coloring book came out and all these things. I was like, hey, I used to do puzzles as a child. So I brought back those actual games and play a lot. So for me, it's kind of like that. But when you brought it up, I'm starting to see it differently. It's also play with emotions, play with scenarios, play with reaction, play with people, and in that sense. And not in a bad way. When I say play with people, it's just, I was sharing earlier with Allison that I was having a very interesting conversation with my husband, and I kind of start laughing when I hang up with him, because I was like, wow, that was so childish. But for me, that was kind of like playing with it, in the sense of like experiencing something and then have fun and have some joy out of it, of recognizing that, hey, that was a game, that was kind of fun. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Completely. I feel like you're really speaking to that extra element of play that I wanted to bring up. You know, did you want to add anything to that, Wind?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess if people have been listening to more than one episode of our podcast, I've mentioned that Allison and I are twin flames and married, and we've been on a journey together over the last few years. And we parted physical ways, well, I don't know, at the time of this recording, maybe 8 months ago, something like that. And part of it was that I didn't really understand what play meant to me at all. I was really disconnected from my inner child. And the time between me leaving Santa Fe and now has first opened up years worth of grief. And I think I've talked about that on a couple of episodes as well, but grief that I had kind of not really been dealing with since I was 6, and I'm 48 now. So 42 years worth of grief that I didn't even know that I was really carrying. And then that was like, once I went through that for about 3-4 weeks of dealing with that, suddenly here I am in this Asheville, North Carolina area that I didn't know that I was going to come to or even resonate with. And all of a sudden, like, everybody is just like showing up like, hey friend, hey friend, hey friend. I feel like I'm in an adult playground here in Asheville. And like every day is something magical, as if I were 6 years old again, just kind of bouncing from one action or motion or thought or, whatever, to another. And it's just like everything is, it's adult, there's the adult drama here and there, there's drugs, things around, but I don't know, it's more of a playful experience. It feels like a bunch of children in adult bodies here more than anywhere that I've been. And so, yeah, and then over the last few weeks, I've definitely got more and more, like, play is starting to make a little bit more sense to me, that everything really is play. And before I left Santa Fe, I said, Allison, for years, like, everything is a game. And she said, I think I like better that everything is a play. And I don't know that it's any different, but maybe it's a way that we perceive things, because I was thinking that life is a game, meaning we could do whatever we want, which is true, but I had sort of had maybe a nihilistic approach to it.
It
Whereas,
felt a little sadistic when I heard it, and I think that's why I switched it to life as a play, because
yeah,
it helped me, tap into we're playing avatars, and
yeah,
also we're directing our own play. It made it more joyful for me to phrase it that way, but I think both are true.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And in fact, it kind of taps into quantum reality, which is that whatever we perceive is the truth. So if we've got this idea that life is a game, then it is. But, like when I think of it that way, I think of video games where people like, it's not happy. It's like
Mm-hmm.
people shooting each other and then you like disintegrate and whatever. So I like to think of it as more like Midsummer Night's Dream, like to me, that helps me put the pieces into action. So anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, I mean, yeah, sadistic, nihilistic. It's about the same. You're right. I was approaching it. I bet you that anybody who's listening to this will have either a firsthand experience with this now or have at some point in their journey where we don't really comprehend, I think, the next step, which is what Allison is talking about when it comes to play, which, my understanding that it's all a game is still true. But yeah, it doesn't have to be sadistic. But even in being sadistic, it's still part of the play that we get to have. It's all a Shakespearean kind of thing, I feel. And we can experience all these range of emotions and whatnot. So I guess then Allison or Isabella, what do you guys think then play means in the context that we're talking about going forward in consciousness?
Well, you brought up something, and I want to hear Allison about it, because you said inner child, and for me, play, when I want to play, I connect so much with my inner child. So what's your experience or opinion about that, Allison?
My inner child is pretty alive and well, but I went on this hike today. It was really funny. Just before we connected, I went on this hike and I was thinking about play. And it occurred to me how I used to play when I was a kid. And I was like, whoa, wow. I was really blown away by this realization, because even as a small child, play for me was control. So I remembered when I was really young, I used to have all these porcelain collections. Like I'd get porcelain tea sets. And I remember even up until I was about, I would say 10 or 11, these porcelain tea sets were all on shelves, perfectly ordered. I would dust them. Like this was my play. I remember I had all these really beautiful fancy dresses. I was kind of spoiled when I was little, and I had these big fluffy dresses that I'd get, like my yearly picture in or whatever. And they were perfectly ordered in my closet, and people could look at them, but they couldn't mess them up. Right. And then fast forward to when I was, in elementary school, and my play was, and this was genuinely fun for me, all of these things, genuinely fun, but my play was, I was always the director, and we would put on these plays. So I remember one time we did like Peter and the Wolf, and I got all the kids in the neighborhood, and they all had like costumes, and I went around door to door and I invited everyone to this play. I mean, like I've always been very much like director control, and it really relates to a lot of my childhood, which I'm not going to go into, but essentially I came into a situation where I actually had a memory as a baby, because I did some EFT tapping and I regressed, and I had a memory of myself as a baby on the changing table crying and screaming. And in my mind, I was telling my parents, "You're idiots. How come I have to be the adult here?" Essentially. So I remembered all this when I'm on my hike, and I'm like, whoa. So even if my inner child is alive and well, my inner child was pretty much like, loved control too. So this is a huge jumping off point for me to really take that and switch it, and to recognize that control if control is the opposite of play, then play is allowing, and play is being present, and play is not feeling, is not feeling like I need to control the outer world. It's allowing the outer world to be and to play with it, to engage with it. So it's almost like engaging with the flow, the natural flow of life, but being engaged. Because I think that one thing that happens is, and I recognize this from talking about being a creator, one thing that happens is, we kind of stop ourselves on this creative path. We say, okay, we've got all this freedom. We can do whatever we want. It's a game. It's a play. We can create whatever we want. We're manifestors and all these things. And then we're like, and we just get totally overwhelmed with how to do that. And so then it can come out as like, oh, I've got to like do all these things, or like, it can come out in really weird ways, or we can totally stop it. And so to me, recognizing that play is engaging with the natural flow of life and playing with energy. So that's the other component I wanted to talk about. It's playing with energy. So like, yeah, we can go outside and do cartwheels, or now that we've had all this adult experience, we can say, I kind of want to play with this energy. What can I create? And how easy can it be? And what emotions do I want to feel? And like, what types of people do I want to interact with? So
that paints a really interesting perspective on life. If you think of life as a play, basically, like everything becomes so much more joyful, and it's okay to make mistakes. And it's like, because you're in a game, right? You're like playing and you're creating whatever you want, and then you realize, oh, that's not really what I wanted, so let's play and create something else. And and I know, like in my world of project management, there's like activities that you do, and the research actually shows that kids do better at those activities, and they actually have fun through it. And for us, when we do it, we're playing, but it's all about control and winning. But kids, it's just about discovering and having fun, and let's see what we can make out of this.
I love that word, discovering. Discovering is, I think that nailed it right there.
And I think it's interesting because I do connect play with inner child, but I also feel that the inner child needs to feel safe and needs to feel loved and accepted. So sometimes the play of the inner child is, like you said, control, and because you're trying to stay in a safe environment. So I'm curious, as an adult, if we can actually learn from it or bring it into the sense that we're safe anyway, so let's just play and see where it goes. But now, thinking in hindsight, like, we sometimes, when we start losing the joy from the play, it becomes control, or the capacity to trying to control the situation and manipulate the situation in a way that we feel safe, or in a way that our emotions, we feel better about it, or but ego in the ego way.
I feel like, I feel like the way that the world is structured, there's an extra addition to all that, and it's sort of like social classes, caste system in India or whatever. Like, I don't know why I was thinking about this while you're talking, Isabel, but like, it just all of a sudden it made me think about, like, in India, there's still a caste system. So, like, and when you think about it, the whole world has a caste system, right? You're a politician, or you're an attorney, or you're a doctor, or you're a teacher, or whatever. When you fit into these social kind of structures that humans have created, that the universe didn't create, the humans created, now all of a sudden your concept of play becomes put into a box of what's acceptable socially for who you are. And I guess I was thinking, what led me to think about that is thinking about how we talk frequently in our podcast about the president that we have now, Trump, who I think is, if you have any understanding of the universe at all, Trump is a timely master for what he's bringing to the planet. And when you can, and when you think that Trump is probably the epitome of the child that never got to play, you know, and he grew up with billions of dollars handed to him and has continued to work with that. And so his idea of play is built in this box of what he thinks play is all about, which is kind of what Allison was even talking about. It's about control and about perpetuating the role of director. So automatically he's kind of actually limited himself, and not just, I mean, I'm just using one example, we all do it, but he's just limited himself into one very narrow purview of what play could be, and tried to operate creatively within that, which was what we all do. So we're all creative within a confines of a box of what we feel is socially acceptable, plus based off the other things that Isabel, you were just talking about emotionally and whatever else that we have going on. And I feel like why this is such a timely topic that Allison is bringing up, and why Era of the True Creator, her book, is timely, is because the question that I asked a few moments ago that led to both of you answering is, well, what does this mean going forward? Well, I feel like what it means going forward is learning how to break ourselves out of the construct of the box that we're in. First, we have to recognize that is a box, and second, we have to be willing to expand our horizons and be more in the flow and more in the moment, which could take a long time to go through that journey. But anything that takes us outside of that box, I feel like brings us in more realms of play that we just kind of have maybe forgotten how to use. And that's really speaking from my own journey over the last few months. I didn't realize that magic is so easy. It's so simple to just walk out my door and suddenly be caught in this flow where I thought I'd be an untethered balloon. And I think that's the greatest fear of the mind, is what happens if I start to play and I become this untethered balloon. I mean, I'm going to become homeless. I'm going to become, like, I'm going to have no ability to show up to work on time if I want to still work. Everyone's going to think I'm fucking crazy, which I think all of that is kind of, it's partly true, but it's not as crazy as I thought it was or would be. It's not daunting. It's just more like there's already a river flow of play that the universe has set for us that we've not allowed. And so, like, when we remove these blockages that we agree to, the society helps us create within ourselves for whatever, and we take it emotionally, we take it physically, physiologically, whatever. When we start to remove these things, all of a sudden that flow, it's always there. It's like going into the Mississippi River. You got to go through the bank first, which is the slower water, and then when slowly you get to the faster middle. But by the time you get to the middle, you're ready to flow with it. And I think that makes sense. I hope that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. It's funny because while you were talking, I experienced something yesterday, and I actually paid attention to it, observed my reaction to it, and I was on a very busy street driving, and I could see this guy on a skateboard going through traffic, and he was doing something like this, and all of a sudden I realized he had, the small guitars, I can't remember
like a ukulele
or mandolin.
Exactly, and he was playing and just skateboarding around the car. And in the past, I would have been like, this guy is insane. Like, I would have completely judged him. But I just connected with its energy, and I was so happy, and I laughed, and I thought it was awesome. Like, I was just like, wow, this guy is super happy. Like, it just put a big smile on my face. And I feel like going forward, when you say in the future, I think we're going to be able to recognize that, like, I didn't judge this guy saying, oh, this guy is probably like on social assistance, not working. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, going into the judgment piece where actually he's probably just playing with life and enjoying it. And he looks super happy. So why would I judge him for that? Like, I just tapped into his energy, and it was awesome.
That's beautiful. I think that really speaks to how we can understand ourselves better. Like, if we're in a place where we're judging or trying to control others, it's because we're not allowing ourselves to play. Right. And when we're really engaged in our own joy, in our own play, then really a lot becomes comfortable, or we just don't notice it. You know what I mean? Like, It's not that all of the sudden we have to allow like the world to be what our minds perceive as like a crazy place. Like we're not all going to go to Burning Man. You know what I mean? We're going to do our own way of playing, but if we're really engaged in like trying to control outside of ourselves or judging, you know, and judging is a form of control because we're using our mental paradigm to like shame somebody else into behaving in a way that's comfortable for us, you know?
And boom, I mean, you both have just said it, but Allison, you just did it twice. And I hate to interject right now because you're on a good roll, but like going back to what I was saying about Trump and why he's a great example right now, that if you're a Trump hater and you're hearing something like this, that's the answer. You're projecting onto him because he carries this "I don't play well" sort of energy, and so you're projecting onto him all the repression that you personally contain. And so you're almost like psychologically we expect people, anybody, whether they're a public figure or anybody that we come across, to suddenly be better than what we are somehow. And yet when they have something that we think that we don't, or whatever, I mean, there's so many ways to dice it, but really like we're projecting so much of our shit onto them because they're mirroring back to us exactly what we are not yet dealing with inside.
Yeah, that's so true.
Like people who are anti-Trump are themselves not playing well in the world, because once you start to play well in the world is really what you're saying, Allison. Once you start to show up for yourself, like you can't even see that. You can't even see a person like Trump, you know, in this example, as somebody who's doing anything wrong, because you're more preoccupied with how much fun you're having. And if you're not having fun, you're paying attention to the people that aren't having fun with you, and you're bastardizing them.
I think too, you know, in relation to that, I want to bring it back to the overwhelm, you know, because this kind of really gives us a compassionate understanding of why we do that to other people. It's because, you know, and I remember, so Chris, who is the founder of the Heart Center and who runs the Heart Center, who Isabel and I both teach for that school, the online school, he tagged me in a post recently on Instagram, and trust me, this is all coming back around, but you know, it was about sexuality, and I teach sexuality with that group. So he tagged me in it. He said, "What do you think about this?" And it was about porn. And essentially what it really came down to is I recognize that like we're so big that it's overwhelming. We have so much potential, and not even potential, but we have so many freaking choices. You know, the thing where they say don't give a 2-year-old more than 2 choices. It's true of everybody. Like there's been studies that we're unhappy because we have so many choices that we can't make them, you know? So we're overwhelmed by how, oh, that was cool, Wind. I don't know what just came in front of your video, but it was like
I saw that too.
a blue streak. That was cool.
I have incense burning, so maybe this.
Oh, that was cool.
Yeah.
So, you know, when we do things like fall into getting upset with politicians or being controlling in our romantic relationships or in our friendships or at work, when we're falling into control and judgment in micro or macro ways, it's really because we are overwhelmed. If we point it back at ourselves, we don't know what the fuck to do. We don't know what to do with ourselves. We have so much that we can do. We don't know what to do. And it's easier to point at someone else and be like, well, you know, you're making me uncomfortable. And it's harder to look at ourselves and say, if I weren't paying attention to anyone else, what would I be doing with my time right now? Would I be serving? You know, would I be serving in a way that really promotes what I believe in? You know, so if your passion in life really is something political, then you'd be out there doing service and something joyful in relation to that, you know, but we're just overwhelmed. And I want to point that out because I feel that that's the compassionate viewpoint of why we do these things, like why we control and why we judge.
So what do you guys think, like when we get like, I don't necessarily want to say triggered, but when we get like frustrated or challenged by something, do you think it's a sign for us that it's a place that we need to play?
I love that.
I mean, it seems like the obvious answer is yes, but there might be more variables to it as humans, where we have a lot of psychological nuances that are create a bridge between where we are and play. You know, like Allison was one time taking some hypnosis classes online.
Yeah, that was funny.
And I think it was this guy. It may have been a different. Maybe it was a life coach that you followed. But I remember the guy was talking about getting somebody from self-hate to fun or something like that. And I remember he said, you can't just expect somebody to go from self-hate to fun in a short period of time. Like, you got to actually celebrate the small steps, which is going from self-hate to anger. That's a big leap to start to step out. I mean, you can even dice that up. And well, I mean, if you experience anger, maybe you're still experiencing self-hate. I mean, how far do you want to go with that rabbit hole? But the point being is, like, if you can get somebody out of like hatred and move them into a place of anger where hatred starts to dissipate, that's a big leap. And so I think maybe maybe Isabel, I feel like answering your question is like there's a gap, and everybody's got maybe a larger or shorter gap between what they're currently doing and play. I don't know. That's a thought.
That's true. Yeah, because my next question would have been like, how do you get there, basically? Like, how do you bring yourself to, and for me, play is laughter. So if I can laugh at something, it means that, okay, like, I'm finally understanding my role and where I am in terms of that play in that sense too. So
I think too, sometimes anger can be a really good sign, because like you were saying, if you're starting kind of here, one thing that I notice with myself is when I get into that place of overwhelm, like I know that I have freedom and I want to create, but what, but how, there tends to be this shutdown, you know, like, and one of the shutdowns that I notice is boredom, and the other is, you know, control or judgment or jealousy. So some of those things, but it really, all of those things kind of point to, like, if you're feeling anger, if you're feeling anything really, it seems like that just points to that part of you inside that's really passionate and wants to be alive, is trying to come out. So, you know, even that first little bit of anger is like, oh, it's that side, it's the inside that says, I want to live, you know, like, but I don't know how, you know? So it's a good step, I think.
Which I think comes back to the question you asked Isabel. Like, it seems like the angers or the triggers or whatever are, it's almost like, I think maybe we just kind of roundabout answered it. Those are the things that are telling you what's in the way of you reaching your play potential.
Signposts.
Like, you're hitting those not because you're being, we've taught ourselves that it's a punitive universe and a punitive world and guilt and shame. So we've told ourselves that when we experience these things, that there's a punishment involved with it or a crime involved with it. But really all it really ever is like, play is the quest, or, you know, or the Holy Grail. And these things that are triggering us along the way, that we're hitting, that stop us from our ultimate play potential, are the things that are the teaching aspects of what we want to learn before we become our ultimate playful self.
Right.
I truly believe that, based off what Allison has channeled, what I've channeled, and just through observation, through new lenses, perpetually newer and newer lenses, like, play is what we're trying to accomplish. Because when we reach our God self, our true God self, all we're doing is creating. That's all God energy is doing. It's just creating. Yeah. And so that's play.
I like that. It's like, it's interesting because for me, play, so I'm a very literal person, and very logical and conceptual, and I'll define and redefine everything, and I, like, when there's a word I don't know, I have to search it and all that. So, and I'm sure there's listeners out there like me. And I'm thinking of, like, for me, and I work as a counselor with a lot of people that had trouble playing and defining play. And for many of us, play is defined when we're a child, and we don't really redefine it as an adult, what it means or could mean. And it's interesting because originally for me, play, I just couldn't. Like, I was thinking of a child that just starts singing and creates songs, and as an adult I was like, no, completely embarrassed about doing that.
Yeah.
Right. And even alone, it's still hard for me to break in dancing alone, like but I play a lot with my hands, so gardening, painting, like creating art for the home, or like that for me is play, and it's fun. And it could even be going to the gym and experience with a new exercise. For me, I like enjoying that stuff. And group fitness class that I dance in, like for me, that's playing in an adult way, because I'm still, my ego is still quite strong about this, like breaking into that play. So does that make sense? Like, because my experience is that there's a lot of people that struggle with playing because they still define it as the child defined play.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be a little daunting if the only type of play, like, if we stopped playing in our youth and then we're trying to rediscover it and we're in our 30s, our 40s, our 50s, our 60s, then what does that really look like? Does it mean that we have to, like, break out the toy trucks and like, go play in the dirt and make sandcastles? Well, actually, that's a form of therapy. And I remember for Wind, that's one of the things that came through in channeling was go get some toy cars and actually play with them. I remember, and he was so resistant to it. I was like, it's a type of therapy, I promise. And I was channeling it. I was like, this is what is coming through that you need to do. And he actually did.
It took a few months, but I finally bought one after about 6 months. I bought a new Hot Wheels car.
I love that. I love it.
Not the only
and I've actually done what Allison saw me doing. I played with it on the floor a little bit. And Isabel, you're right. It's a little bit weird to do that again, but it started to feel okay.
Let's talk about this. Like, what's the weirdest as an adult? Like, what's something totally weird that you've let yourself play with?
Well, it goes back to my example of the guy that was skateboarding with his little, like, singing and having fun. Like, it's the judgment. That's completely it. It's the like, what are others going to think I'm crazy? For me, anyway.
I feel like that's such a ubiquitous question. It's anything that takes us out of our comfort zone.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it was me going to the drum circles in Siesta Key, Florida, and allowing myself to dance in front of people, and wow, that's opened an incredible new world of possibility and fun inside me. To, I don't know, since I've been in Nashville, going, I've got a 24-year-old coworker who I feel like is like an equal brother, or I went with a couple 20-somethings to different dance or music shows out here in Asheville area. Like, people, these are half my age people. I mean, when I grew up, you don't do that kind of thing, like that was uncomfortable at times. And then, just playing with this little Hot Wheels car was so fucking weird to play with this thing. Although when I was 6 years old, when everything really did shut down, when I was 6 years old, I could play with these things all day long.
Yeah.
That was my one form of play, was playing with these things back then. And somewhere over 42 years, I developed, even my daughter is 26. Even when she was growing up, playing with her, I felt like a shitty dad because I just didn't comprehend the idea of play.
Huh. Isn't it funny that we get so embarrassed as adults to do these things? Like, I don't really understand why, and yet I get it because I do get embarrassed at times. Yeah. Although, like, I tend to feel like I'm very, very childish and childlike in a lot of ways. Like, I live with my niece and nephews, and I can really get on their level pretty easily and play and just be dorky and silly. We have dance parties. I love, like every time for the heart opener for the heart center, I always love to do the turn on a piece of music and we're just going to free dance like that. It, to
so
me is
weird.
Yeah. And I love it. But the area that I tend to be a stick in the mud is sexuality, which is so funny because that's what I teach, and that's what I've been guided again and again and again for the past year. It's like time for me to teach that. And I have been, but sexual play, I think, is society wide. It's kind of a difficult thing for us to let ourselves do.
Yeah.
And I mean, like a few people that I work with right now, or have worked with, are women who have a hard time reaching orgasm because it's different for women. And so one of the things that tends to be like pretty regular is this feeling of not allowing pleasure and not allowing time, for that pleasure, for self-pleasure. And I would definitely say that men deal with this too, but it's different. It doesn't necessarily come out in not being able to orgasm. It shows up as like not being able to pursue women or have fun in dating and things like that. But yeah, sexuality, it's so funny. And it ties right back to what you were saying, Isabel, which the area that we have the hardest time in playing is really part of our calling,
That's so true. Oh, I like that.
And there's no destination. Like, when you're talking about choices and being overwhelmed, it's true. But when you start to really just open the doors, like there's no destination. There's no limitation. Everything in your day I'm working landscaping right now and it's exhausting, but the more playful I become inside, the less the work becomes exhausting. I'm still doing the same work. I'm still with, that the stress levels get a little tweaked at times with the people that we work with and stuff like that, but it becomes less of a thing. And even when it is a thing, it maybe like gets to a little apex of like personality for a couple moments, but then it washes away when we're laughing again. Like, there's no limitation. There's no like, well, the mind is always trying to create a box. So what does it mean to play? Well, it doesn't mean anything. It just means not stopping whatever wants to happen and not judging and not compartmentalizing and not going, well, because we had a rift between me and such, now we can't talk. Like, in the universal scheme, that's still play, but in a higher consciousness level, that's restricted play.
Right.
It's still compartmentalizing that we don't play well together. And I'm so guilty of that. I get that one really well.
That's interesting because you're right. Like the whole life is a play basically, and we all have a role and we all play different roles at different times. But I keep on seeing, I can't remember which movie it is, but he's repeating the same day all the time.
Groundhog Day.
Yeah. But I'm seeing us doing this in life. Like the analogy of life is like this. We come back on earth and we repeat the same thing all over, but we have the opportunity to play a different role or see a different perspective of that day. And that's what I'm seeing right now. Like it's just us going through life and doing the same, like having the same scene over and over again, but playing different roles.
Absolutely. And it's in my book, I actually talk about that. I talk about how drama is recreation. Drama is that re-looping based on the mental paradigm. And then true creation is play, which I'm actually still like really at the like precipice of discovering what that really means. But it's just interesting because we get in, the way that it was presented to me when I channeled it was some people are caught in time. So we recreate the same time loop over and over again, instead of recognizing that we're actually moving forward in this construct that we've created for the human existence called time, right? We're actually, different things are always happening and always possible to happen. But like in our mind, it's always the same. I wake up, my name's still Allison. I still go get my toast. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, we know how to do that re-looping thing. Right. What's spontaneity though? Like,
Right.
That's uncomfortable.
Instead of the scene being the same over and over again, it's the role that is the same and the constant in this, right?
I ask myself a lot now, like, what happens if I completely let go? Will I actually become that lunatic homeless person that's laughing at everything, but has all the fucking laughter in the world? Like, that actually could feasibly occur. And I've had to really get okay with that. And I don't know why I needed to get okay with that, but I do. But I couldn't get okay with it without starting to play first and realizing that the more I play, the more it'll be so fucking funny and cool if that actually occurs. I'm fortunate the military is going to pay me a pension the rest of my life, so I'm always going to have money for food at the very least. Maybe not everybody has that. That's a little structure in my mind, though, that I had to really even like get down with. Like, oh, I'll be okay, but that has been a journey too, you know. But now it's just like, I could even lose that and I'd be okay. I really feel that now I could lose everything and totally be just fine and probably really just happy. I want to see, though, how much I can play that way and not lose everything, but instead gain all the things, all the basic needs kind of stuff, just because it's actually like playing a real life Monopoly. That like the more I play, the more shit comes to me, and I don't even have to worry about it. Like I feel like there's that level of feeling like, okay, that's what play could take me to. But what also on the cosmic awakened, really, really awakened, enlightened level? What if I play so hard that I find myself in ancient Egypt and ancient Thailand and current US all at the same exact time? Because time and space don't exist anyway. So what happens if I play so hard that in this body I experience all that at one time? That's what I feel like we could really do. The only limitation to that is our mind, because our mind believes everything is linear and chronological. So I guess these are the things that help me kind of like open more and go, well, fuck, what is possible? That's what I want to know.
Possible. But it's interesting though hearing you in, because the way you see play is like you're saying like on the street and etc., like not working. That's how I heard it. And for me, my work is so much playful. I get so much play out of my work, and I always laugh at people's reaction, or how like the word busy for me is the funniest word ever. Like I just find it so funny when people say, oh, I'm so busy. It's like, well, everyone's busy. Like 24 hours, and we choose to use it the way we want it. And so for me, like at work is where I play the most, I would say. I make a lot of mistakes and I discover a lot, and it really, it's joyful. I'm not saying that it's joyful every day and every minute, but in general, that's my game. Like that's where I can create and discover and have a lot of joy in making mistakes and learning from them too. So it's interesting how we see it. I guess I feel like we see it slightly different. But.
Yeah, and it kind of speaks to the different like levels that we exist in that we can play with. We can play with our physical reality, so we can play with our job, and you know, we can play with the people that we interact with on that very physical level. Then we can move into like the more energetic realm, or even the time-based realm, you know, or the psychic realm. Like we can play on all of these levels, and everyone's going to have different areas where they really want to sort of unfurl their fractal spiral and continue down that line, you know?
Yeah.
Like for me, I want to learn how to play with people. Like I want to learn how to have lots of friendships and connect with people and do that sort of like, when I think of love, it's very like, I picture myself just hugging so many people. Like, God, that would be the ultimate play, to just be able to like travel to different cities and hug people and like just feel so good in everybody's presence. Oh, that would be amazing play and travel, you know? So both of those things, and they kind of deal with different aspects. And, you know, with wind, it's like the energetics of like time travel and, you know, levitation and things like that. And Isabel, it's like the work and really like Like, how much can I do in this workplace that other people see as difficult? And it's actually like pretty easy for me, you know? So we just all have different areas of play. And I really feel that, you know, when, like you were saying, our mind puts us in this trap of play means this. It means that I have to go out and, like, you know, take my clothes off and go streaking and, you know, like throw poop on somebody's doorstep and light it on fire. I mean, maybe.
Allison, did you record yourself the last time you did that?
What do you mean? Oh, you mean the last time I, like, threw some poop on somebody's doorstep?
While running naked through the neighborhood, yeah. Did you get that on video?
That is something I'm very comfortable with. I love naked time. I love naked time. I love dancing. Those are things that are comfortable for me. Throwing poop on somebody's doorstep, maybe not comfortable, but kind of funny. But yeah, we're all going to have different areas of play, and like our mind is going to want to limit us. And Isabel, I was telling Isabel before we got on this call that she has the energetic exchange with me of creating breakthroughs. So like something about Isabel, every time I need a breakthrough, it seems like lately especially, I hear something that Isabel says and it's just like, bing, you know, I don't know how that works, but I'm so grateful for it. So I was listening to the podcast. It was one of your guys' first, and you guys both speak on really amazing things, you know, but it was, Isabel said, it's that creative fire that you guys are talking about. And she said, it ended up being this podcast that lit that creative fire.
Yeah.
And I realized that my mind had told me, Allison, if you're creative, it has to mean this, this, and this, and it's going to be uncomfortable to get there, and you're going to get embarrassed getting there. And all of these things, I built all these ideas of what that was going to look like. But really, like, creativity is built to flow. So it doesn't necessarily have to be uncomfortable. It's just going to be different for everybody, you know?
And I remember Isabel and I have talked about on our podcast how part of our journey to this podcast was that we exchanged distant sessions for each other. Yeah. And when I did my read for Isabel, like, I remember seeing that her play, Isabel, your play, is exactly what you're doing. Like a structured world, living a normal, quote unquote, human life.
Yeah.
Married, holding down the job, your husband now, you know, a National Guard recruiter. So you both work governmental, hospital, program management, the structure world. So for the listeners who like are always concerned, like, what does this mean? Do I have to give up? Allison's brother once said, you know, like, I would love to see what Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, would have been like if he was married and had children and had to hold down a mortgage and a job. You know, like, it's true. Like, so then we start to go, compare ourselves to the Joneses again. Like, well, how do we accomplish this and still do? So I think, like, Isabel, you're a prime example of not having to give up that life. That life is your play. And I had this dialogue just recently with somebody that being in the military for 20 years, like I was some of the most creative time of my life. And, you know, at first they were like, well, how can that be creative? All your creativity is stripped away. And I started to explain, well, but Isabel, you already explained it at the beginning of this, earlier in this podcast. Like, there's creativity within the way that you regulate yourself through those boxes. And sometimes you want to find the loopholes that get you out of those boxes to accomplish something that you want to accomplish. And that's fun. Yeah. I did that for 20 years. That's fun. I made an entire Navy career out of doing anything but what I should have been able to do. Nobody did. Rarely does anybody do in the military all the shit that I was able to get away with for 20 years. I call that the most creative 20 years of my life.
Absolutely.
Up until now.
It makes so much sense, because when someone tells me, like, oh, we've tried that before and it never worked, it's like, yeah, this is like, like, let's do it. That's how I do it.
I love it. I love it. You guys are so funny. That's fantastic. And what was I going to say? Oh, I remember taking art classes. And one of the things, and I share this a lot, one of the things that we did in art class at the very beginning, they'd always say, okay, we're going to paint, but we're only going to use 3 different colors of paint, black and white, and you can pick the third color. So blue or red or whatever. And within those tight confines, you learn how to create with the materials, the limited materials. You learn how to really funnel that creativity in. Whereas if you're a beginner painter and you've got like an entire palette in front of you, it looks messy. It actually looks terrible. But people come through with these amazing paintings because they learn with just these 3 colors, like, wow, you know, you can really create something here. And it's so good for the mind to learn that, I think, you know?
Yeah, it's so true. And no matter, like, if everyone have the same material, it all comes out different anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Totally. You know, Isabel, and maybe Allison too, but like Isabel specifically, maybe because you do tarot readings and stuff like that. So I feel like astrology is a little maybe more your thing than me and Allison's thing in some ways. How do you feel that our astrological signs come into play with play?
That's a good question. Well, I think it goes back to the illusion. So many people believe that there's a certain energy attached to a certain sign that it's almost like we create that, we manifest it. But I'm a Leo, and a lot of time that I'll tell people that I'm Leo, they'll be like, wait, like you're not extrovert enough. Like you're not trying to step on others people's toes, or like stuff like that we have a very specific concept of astrology and how we should be, and if you're born on that date and that time, like you should be like this. I think there's some truth to it, but I think you can still play and create whatever you want. Like you don't have to, it goes back to that box. You don't have to go into that box. I guess if you're, I'm curious to think if you have no, like I can call some people that have really strong traits that are connected to their sign. I'll be like, oh yeah, that makes sense because you're Gemini. Like I can say that, but yeah, it doesn't mean that everyone's like that. And I think that's where we have the choices and the opportunity to create whatever we want. Like I'm a 99.9% introvert, but yet I'm on the podcast with you, yet I'm with the Heart Center. That's because I played with it. It was so uncomfortable for me. But after doing 300 presentation in a past job that I had, it was like, okay, I'm good to go now. I can do this. And I think that's when I say, like, hey, you're saying I'm this because I'm Leo. Here's a challenge. I'm going to challenge your thought, and I'm going to challenge your perspective of it. And that's why with tarot cards it's the same. Like I use tarot cards, but you've both experienced it, and I use them very differently than most people.
You do. I really like your readings. I think in terms of tarot readers, like I don't even consider you a tarot reader. I trust your energy, so I love having readings from you.
Right. And
yeah, because you're almost using the tarot cards as a way to set up what you already know. I think I told you that after we did the reading. Like they're almost giving you the permission to speak what you already know. It's like they're, whereas other people are using the tarot cards to guide them through a scenario. You're doing it like you don't even need the tarot cards. They're just sort of a medium for you to allow that.
Exactly. And that's when you start connecting with your heart in the play, right? You start to create whatever you want from it. But for me, like the cards used to be like, okay, very box control. This card came up, like this, the world means this, and that's the star, and it means this. Like I was very literate about it, but I was so disconnected from my intuition, which I thought, this is not the tarot. Because I'm the creator. I can, touch into it and create whatever I want. And to be honest, I'm moving to that space that it's a psychic reading, but I'm using the cards to make sure that the the client that I have like a communication tool basically. So if they see the card, I'll show them, you see this is basically what I get in my head. This is the image that I have in my head, but it's so hard for me to communicate it. I allow the cards to communicate. So all that to say that based on your question, I think that people are still stuck in that box and they're not playing with it and not exploring, discovering.
And I feel like that goes to what I was saying earlier about like picking Trump as an example, or social structures or social caste systems, and saying, well, now we're in this box of what we're allowed.
Yeah.
Like before I started to play, I hit over and over for years this apex of sitting in the all through channeling and thinking that was supposed to be my everyday, that I was always supposed to be walking around on this cloud. Right? Well, that's one perception of enlightenment that the world has created. Now, to be an enlightenment teacher or a consciousness teacher, you've got to be floating on a fucking cloud. Well, I mean, I think we're already floating on a cloud. We just want to call it Earth. But it's all perception. But also, like, I realized that when I was in those states, though, when I was meditating or channeling, that I was literally transcending all signs. I was transcending my skin color, my birthplace, my name, even my birth name, my name, rebirth name of wind, whatever. I was transcending shamanism. I was transcending all of that. There was zero. And I felt like the ultimate way from here is to then carry this forward throughout the world and always be outside of the boxes. And I think that's one way to do it. But when Allison and I went physically apart, it was like with the goal of us both comprehending different things that we're going through. And for me, it was like understanding play. Well, as I've come back into understanding play again, I've started to understand that my rising sign of Gemini is forefront. It's front and center. It's almost like my blueprint for play stems from the qualities that Gemini has, which is all over the fucking place, And really like in the moment. But I think we can all still transcend all of these things through more and more play. It's just almost like my way to understand what this leads to, almost like the Gemini and the white male, born in US America, raised as a military guy, I think all those things set kind of the train tracks that I'm on. But I can get off of them, and I think the more that I play, it's almost, I really still think you dissolve it as if you would if you just stayed in transcendental states all the time, but just in a more fun way.
I can totally agree. Yeah.
I like that. Kind of like you go way, 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 way out, and then you say, but I want to be human.
Yeah.
I'm here to be human.
Yeah.
And that's cool. And it comes with the recognition and the beautiful, almost heart-wrenching joy for how beautiful this human experience is. Yeah. Whereas sometimes in the spiritual community, we can be unaccepting of our humanness and judgmental of it and disregarding of it, and like feeling like we should float on that cloud. I tend to think that people who feel that they should, as in like should, I'm putting air quotes up, that they should be floating on that cloud and that it needs to look a certain way, haven't actually reached that place where they've felt what that feels like to float on that cloud. Because once you get there, there's really this beautiful acceptance and joy for the human experience. And then, you can make that conscious decision. Like, I'm actually going to be full on human this time. Like, I'm going to be really human. I'm going to jump in this human game,
That's so true. And it makes me laugh because it goes back. I always thought the universe is the biggest humor, the biggest comedian in the world, because when you're in that space of, I should be here, I should be feeling this, and then all of a sudden you're in the space, you're feeling it, you're like, I'm here, this is awesome, not the world, and all of a sudden the universe is like, yeah, you can, okay, let's see what you do with this challenge.
Exactly.
And then you're like back to rock bottom, and you're like, I thought I learned everything and I thought I could deal with this, and instead of being in the game and being like, okay, this is a challenge. I'm going to show you I can do this.
Yes.
So it's kind of interesting.
It's funny, that makes me think, Isabel, of like one of our first podcasts when a few weeks before when we were talking about the podcast, and somehow between us, the mini documentary series Wild Wild Country about Osho came up. That's on Netflix. And I was like saying, well, I have a strong resonance with Osho, and that triggered you. And
I don't have great experience with Osho.
Right. Well, boy, man, that's really brought a lot to my palate since then. But I said it then, and I still believe it's true that Osho, the game beat Osho. He knew how to play the game to a certain point, but then there was a certain amount of living that he had never accomplished. So he had an emotional stump when he got caught red-handed in certain things that he couldn't come. And it shows it on video. I mean, full on. It's not just like creative filmmaking. It shows him on video, like reprimanding Sheila, the woman that was working for him, saying, "Oh, it's a good thing I never had made love to her. Never make love with the secretary, because she's fucking crazy and she's on too many drugs." Like, that's already admitting that he was beyond his capacity of enlightenment. The game beat him, number one. Number two, when they extradited him out of the U.S., he fucking hid on that plane. He tried to hide in the back of the plane when the FBI was waiting for him when he landed, and he got beat. And so, to me, the game of life, this is exciting to me, is like, don't ever let yourself get beat. If you can do that, I feel like that's the ultimate of transcendentalism. Like, nothing is stopping you. You have no more shame. You have no more things stopping you. You would never even be extradited from a country because you're just literally, I don't know. I just feel that you're in a different caliber of playing that doesn't get you in trouble. It doesn't make you want to shame others because you're not holding on to the shame anymore and the guilt anymore. And I think if I were to say what's new about play now in our time that wasn't before, it's like eliminating the barriers of shame and guilt so that we can evolve into these true higher consciousness, unlimited creators.
It makes sense because when you think of Osho, for me, and I share that with you, what he lacked was a connection with his heart. And I think
that's what I say.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I say the same thing. I'm like, oh, he totally had enlightenment, but he didn't love.
Yeah.
He wasn't in his heart with it.
Not transcendental love. He was creating followers, but not leaders. No. He still had a need for people to love him as a figure. And that's not love. That's not self-love.
No. So
that's so funny.
His play is about connecting with your heart and that love, and yet being also conscious that everything is an illusion and you can create whatever you want. So I think if you're in that space, you can never be a jerk, or you can never be like the person who's like abusing of others or get caught or whatever you want to call it, or be judgmental, just completely judgmental. I think you go above that.
I would agree with, both of you. It's almost like I have a great love for Osho because of how far he went.
Yeah.
I love him. I mean,
me too.
He activates me in a way that makes me want to cry gratitude because he really pushed the boundaries publicly for so many people that helped us be free to do what we are doing now, which is even just talking about it and having it be kind of normal. But it's so funny, Isabel, because I said the same thing to Wind, because I remember first learning about Osho, and I was like, he did have enlightenment, but this is probably where I started going, it's not a game. It's not a game, like everything matters, because so much entwined with my life purpose is the universal understanding of love, and to be connected in that way. It's all good. I think it's all true. I think, absolutely enlightenment can mean breaking everybody's, kneecaps. That, because you're tuned into a level of reality, of hyper reality. You're tuned into where really it's true. None of it matters. And yet the beautiful thing to me is when we can go, to me, it feels like even more expanded beyond that and say, oh, but everything does matter and we're all interconnected. And how can I make this awesome, not just for myself, but like quantum for everybody, you know? And like, can we play with energy that way? You know?
Yeah, I like that. This is a great conversation. I didn't think that we could talk that long about play.
Isabel, you always seem pleasantly surprised that we were able to get as long as we did on the conversation.
I know. I'm the child, right? I'm like,
yeah. I'm surprised.
I've always been the one that like everything amazed me. I'm just always, that's probably the one thing that I've never lost and don't get embarrassed about. It's just being amazed by everything. Like a squirrel was just on the tree and I was like, that's fun. Like,
I love that. That's definitely your strength. I love that.
That's interesting. I'm sitting here, like this book, I was on my Harley the other day, Shakespeare and the Brothers. It's veterans who ride motorcycles in a couple of motorcycle gangs. This book, some Harley riders handed me the other day because I had my Harley parked and I was getting gas and they were on a group ride. And like every single day I go somewhere and somebody gives me something for free. And Allison knows really well how I've spent a majority of my time in my life saying, at some point the other shoe is going to drop and I'm going to stop receiving things and I'm going to have to pay for all that people are giving me. I'm going to have to pay to receive. And it's really hit me lately because every single day something free is given to me, whether it's something material or it's somebody going out of their way to do something extra kind or reverent towards me, even if we just met eyes for a second. And I don't have that trigger anymore that's saying I don't deserve all that the universe is trying to give me. And the reason I deserve this is because I'm obviously giving out enough light, love, true light and love, not the spiritual community light and love, but like the true kind that's like just very like, I'm so connected with you. Like I have zero separation between me and you that seems to really feed the hive that we all really are, the oneness that we all really are. I didn't realize that I was in that already until I started to go, wow, well, people are giving me some free stuff every single day. I mean, and the value is whether it's $15 like this book or $5 at the Kava and Kratom bar. Here, have a free Kratom. Like, what, really? Like, it's over and over and over and over. Well, here, let me take $20 off your food bill. Like, what? Huh. Like, these things before would make me go, I don't deserve this. And Allison knows. Like, I'm like, oh, that's fucking awesome. But in my mind would start spinning, and I would totally sabotage it the next time. Huh. So what I've also learned is, like, in play, like, you have to keep saying yes. Everything that comes, you have to say yes. And if you say no, like one guy walked by me the other day and wanted to hand me some of his Cheetos, and he was clearly on something, and my mind went to, he's handing me Cheetos that are laced with something, so I said no. And almost as soon as I said no, I almost felt guilty because I'm supposed to say yes to everything, and he was being so kind. It was open-hearted. Like, he's like, hey, friend, I don't even know, have some Cheetos. And I was like, oh my God, I shut him down in a moment of wanting to be reverent and honoring. But I was like, wait. It's okay that I said no. It's okay. I'm going to learn to say yes more and more. And I did some gratitude towards all of it and everything. But I feel like play just involves more saying yes and saying yes and saying yes. And when we have those things that we might say no to, like, it's okay. Like, don't judge ourselves. I don't know. It just seems like I said, it's like once you step into this, through this like thin lining between play and non-play, like all of a sudden everything is just like conspiring. It's what all the like in The Secret, the law of attraction type of stuff. The universe is always conspiring to give you every single thing that you want, and you owe nothing for it except to be you.
Just show up.
That's it. And I mean, like, I show up when I don't even know. I mean, from what people are mirroring back to me, it seems as if I'm showing up with like such kindness in my heart, even if I'm not even looking at you, that they're like, let me come to you and bring you something. I'm like,
that's really cool.
That's baffling. I always thought that I had to, one, earn it, and two, that I didn't deserve it.
Mm. And I'm sure a lot of listeners believe that.
Yeah.
And that's actually a good way to start playing, is changing your thoughts, your belief, and recognizing it too, because you seem to have just been conscious of it and grateful that you're aware of it.
Yeah. There's many ways I still find myself saying no, but it's like it's not even a challenge to myself. It's just like, well, the next time I just won't say no, you know? Oh, I got caught off guard again a little bit here in the moment, so I'll make sure the next time I say yes. Like, or to the next person that comes by, I'll say more yes to them, even if they have nothing. You know, it just keeps the energy flow moving. Right. It's just about energy. It's not about person to person specific. It's about the energy of interaction, of playful interaction.
Yeah, that's so true. And I want to go back to something, and maybe we can conclude on that. But Allison, when you talked about play in your book, you talk a lot about drama, and I listened to one of your, I think it was an Instagram video that you did on defining drama, and I want you to define drama, because some people were like seeing drama as like, oh, this person does this and this person does that and blah blah blah, like drama in life. But the way you defined it, I was like, that's different, but yet it makes so much sense. And I think it connects so much to play.
Yes, it absolutely does. You know, and it's interesting. I have a friend so I do these Facebook and Instagram lives based on questions that people ask me. I have a friend who bought my book, and it's not really her type of book, but she loves me, so she bought it. You know what I mean? So she's like, I need a glossary for this book. I have no idea what you're talking about. She's like, this word and this word and this word, those don't mean the same things to me as they do to you, apparently. So yes, but all of these terms that are in the book, they came through in channeling, because what's happening is humanity is now evolving or spiritually moving towards or expanding towards perceiving life from an energetic place. So what I mean by that is, when we kind of look at life on a physical level, it means one thing. When we look at it on a mental level or a time-based level, it means another thing. When we move past that and into energetics, it actually means something far different. And so when we look at drama from an energetic perspective, the perspective that I was shown is not that drama is coming into a room and like snapping your fingers and being all like, I don't know, like shaking your head and, you know, like reality TV. While that's drama, what was really shown to me with the energetics of drama is that it's a recreation process. So drama actually means anytime that we're living from our mental paradigm of what something needs to be, instead of living from the present moment, from the heart, from our higher self, things like that. So to give the example that I use is, you know, if your regular thing is to not speak your truth and you're all closed up in your throat chakra and things like that, drama for you is not speaking your truth. Whereas breaking that drama cycle means coming into a room and saying, this is how I feel. In the human paradigm, that might look like drama because you might upset all these people, supposedly. But really, when you're talking about it from an energetic perspective, you're flowing with the present moment, and that is true creation. And that's not drama. So we perceive it very differently on this human level, where we think if things go out of the norm, it's drama. But really, drama is being in the norm and just going by the status quo, and what our mind perceives needs to happen based on what we've already done.
Right. And that's why what Wynn was sharing about, like, your belief of, like, you're receiving so much, you're not deserving and not worth it. For me, I connect it to that definition of drama in some ways. Does that make sense?
Are you asking me?
Both of you.
Oh, I'm saying, yeah, it makes sense. I didn't know if you were directing that question at me or Allison or
Let's all answer at once.
Am I Wait, am I in the drama because I didn't give you any more than it makes sense?
Now we're upset with you. You didn't fall under our mental paradigms.
That's it. Not in the flow. You're not in the flow. No, I'm joking. But yeah, I feel like it connects back to that, like to the things we're recreating, the scenarios we're recreating that we don't necessarily learn from it, right?
They're limiting. They're limiting because they're based on those mental boxes that we like to keep things in, you know. And I could go on and on and on about that, but hey, if you want to read more about it in my book. But yeah, because I totally agree. I think, and it's going to look different for everyone. What are our mental barriers, you know?
Yeah.
Like for me, it's not that I don't feel deserving of people giving me things for free. For me, it's something different, you know. It's, you know, the control, like what we were talking about before, and releasing that to play. It's just going to look different for everyone. But it starts with a mental paradigm. So
I love that.
I feel like people at this stage, then Allison should just share with our listeners how they can get a hold of her book.
Yay! You and Isabel are on that wavelength. I love it.
I know we're very funny with the kind of built-in telepathy. It's kind of funny.
You have a synergy, perhaps?
That's what the universe told us. That's how we came up. We didn't came up with the name. The universe said synergy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love your guys'
It was like
show.
it was like in a South African or a British accent too.
Oh, was it? Your guides have like an Australian accent. They're all today, mate. Your show is going to be called. So yeah, my book, actually, here's the cool thing. My book is in a couple different bookstores right now.
Hey.
So only a couple at this point, but I'm, you know, trying to get it into more. So if you live near a bookstore that's like metaphysical or spiritual, let me know. I'd really love to hear about it, because then I'll call them. So anyway, the other way that you can get my book is on Amazon, and it's called The Era of the True Creator.
After you did your last radio show, The Subjective Perspective, my coworker and friend John, who's best friends with the host of that show, the next morning goes, was it just me, or did he keep saying it was the error of the true creator? The error.
Maybe it's both.
I love it. But you have so much more than your book. I know you're going on a book tour soon.
Yes. Yeah, thanks you guys. Yeah, I'm doing a book tour. It's going to last at least a month and a half. I'm starting here in Washington. I'm dipping down into Idaho, Oregon, California. So far, those are the only spots that I have really planned. And Kansas City, actually, or no, Salina, Kansas. What? Totally random little spot. Cool. Where we have a friend there. Wind and I have a mutual friend that is from Salina, Emily. So anyway, and then it's ending at the Heart Center retreat, which is at the end of September. So in between there, I'll just be going all over the place and doing workshops and yay, meeting people and hugging them just like I wanted to.
Yeah, already. See?
Yeah. And then I have a couple online courses, actually. And, you know, I have one called the True Creator Mastery Course. It's launching July 11th. Okay. So that'll be an 8-week-long course. It's going to be amazing. It goes along with the book, and it's highly interactive. And then you get lifetime access and all those things. So some of it will be online, and the rest will be, you know, connecting with me in the group. And then the other one that I'm really excited about that came to me on my hike is I'm going to start a pleasure course. Oh. And so if anyone's listening to this, I'm taking 7 people for this pleasure course. It's going to be 4 weeks long. We're going to meet once a week for 4 weeks. And we're going to discover how to generate pleasure within our own bodies so that we're not always seeking it from outside ourselves. Because one of the things that I do is sexuality coaching, and I get a lot of people who are really trying to tune into their own pleasure centers. So that's what this is about, and it's going to be awesome. the pleasure course, it's just kind of going to be the beta version at first. So it's going to be super, super low cost for the first 7 people that want to join in. So
that's great.
That's all my blah, blah, blah promo.
And wait, which bookstores is your book in currently?
It is in Portland, Oregon at the New Renaissance bookstore. And that's a spiritual bookstore. And then Santa Fe, New Mexico, it is in the Ark. And that is a really cool metaphysical store. And then there's a couple other places that are currently reading it to see if it'll fit in their bookstore.
Awesome.
Nice.
So it starts there. Yay.
I'll make sure that all the information is on the description of the podcast. So for those of you who are listening right now, just go on the description and you'll find a way to reach out, Allison.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you. This is awesome. So thank you again for the listeners for listening. And I'm not sure what's going to happen to the next podcast, but we shall see, right, Gwen?
Yeah. Wait, what do you mean?
Well, we never know what's the next episode, so we can't really share.
That's true. Yeah, we can't project ahead. Stay in the present, the power of now.
Yeah, I should episode.
Oh, it's a sign. It'll be Eckhart Tolle.
That'll be the word.
I love it. I know it's Jim Carrey, though. Maybe it's
Jim Carrey. Yeah. I think you guys should interview Slocum.
Isabel asked before if we could do the Amazon, and I said I don't know. I don't think their internet is fast enough even at highest speed place unless they've upgraded it there. But I had thought about it. Yeah, Slocum is our shaman mentor, who's from here in North Carolina, who lives in the Amazon for a couple decades now.
Maybe he'll come to North Carolina and we can interview him.
Yeah, well, I think he comes home every year for Christmas, so we could feasibly do it around then.
That would be exciting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for this episode, and this was wonderful connecting with you, Allison.
Oh, I love you guys so much. I really appreciate you having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for being our first guest, and it's really great. Yeah, and we'll get your information out there for your book, and everybody should really read it. It's definitely new and good.
So good.
Thanks,
so
guys.
much insight. Thank you. Bye, listeners.
See you later.